My name is Eleanor Hartman. I'm 67, a retired high school English teacher, and this is my kitchen. The tea kettle clicks off. The tile is cool under my bare feet, and my daughter-in-law is standing by my refrigerator like she owns it. "If you don't like living with us," she says, "maybe you should leave." She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't have to. The words land like a slap in my own house. I set the mug down and slide my phone behind the sugar canister. Thumb press to record. I've taught teenagers for 40 years. I know when a performance is starting. What I don't expect is how fast she moves to the next act. 10 minutes later, she's on speaker with 911, voice trembling, telling the operator I'm confused, erratic, maybe dangerous. Her mascara shines wet, but there were no tears a breath ago. The siren starts as a rumor at the edge of our street. My son is in the doorway, stuck between his wife's story and my stare. I breathe, count to 5 the way I taught my students before a big speech, and reach for the kettle. My hands are steady. "Ma'am," the dispatcher says, through the phone Vanessa holds to her cheek, "stay where you are. Help is on the way." Help. That's a word that used to mean a casserole after a funeral, a neighbor's snow shovel on your front walk, a hand at your elbow when you miss the curb. I don't know what it means when help arrives because your own family invited it against you. I lift the mug, let the steam warm my face, and think of the boxes in the garage with my husband's handwriting on them. I think of the deed with my name, and I think of the little red dot on my screen, proof that I am not crazy. I am paying attention, and I am done being quiet. The night Michael and Vanessa moved in, I cooked a pot roast the way my husband had always liked it, heavy on carrots, sprigs of rosemary tucked under the meat. They arrived with 2 suitcases and a promise it would be temporary, just until he found another job and she picked up more hours at the salon. I set towels on the bed, a spare key on the nightstand. The house felt fuller. For a week, I told myself that was a blessing. But a month slipped by. Then 2. I kept the pantry stocked, the thermostat where they liked it. I paid for the specialty coffee Vanessa swore she couldn't start her day without. When the credit card bill arrived with a charge for 3 tickets to Orlando, I read the line twice. Vanessa posted photos of hotel pools, palm trees, margaritas in plastic cups. "We needed a break," she said when I asked, as if vacations were oxygen. I brought up rent one afternoon, careful as if handling glass. Michael said he was lining things up. Vanessa didn't look up from her phone. "We do the dishes sometimes." The words hung in the air like a joke told at the wrong moment. That was when I began keeping score. The kitchen bin filled with takeout boxes. A sleeve of stamps went missing from my desk. Some mornings, the coffee tasted metallic, sharp on my tongue. I started making my own cup before they came downstairs. I told myself it was just a different brand, but unease lingered. I kept my husband's study untouched, a room of order in a house slipping into disorder. One afternoon, I came back from the store to find Michael at the computer, headset on, laughing at flashing graphics of gunfire. "Just a break," he muttered. My passwords had always lived in my head. Now I wasn't so sure. By the 7th month, the house no longer felt like mine. Vanessa placed her phone face down whenever I entered. She spoke to me differently when Michael wasn't in the room. "You've seemed so stressed." "Eleanor," she told me one morning, pushing a mug toward me. "Forgetful. It's understandable at your age." She said age with soft pity, as though kindness could disguise the blade. I carried the mug to the porch and poured it into the azalea. The leaves browned at the edges that week. Michael remained gentle but absent, drifting through the house like a guest in his own life. Vanessa was the one setting the tone now, deciding what was said and what was swallowed. My days grew smaller, rooms I avoided, meals I ate alone, Evenings spent listening to footsteps overhead and wondering if silence was strength or surrender. Then came Saturday. I stood at the sink, sponge in hand, when Vanessa leaned against the doorframe and spoke as if commenting on the weather. "If you don't like living with us, maybe you should leave." The words split the air. My hands stilled. Light from the blinds carved stripes across the counter, and in those stripes I saw the hinge of my life. For years, I had chosen quiet. I had chosen patience, tolerance, the path of least resistance, but silence, I knew from teaching, is not peace. Silence is absence. I set the sponge down and walked down the hall to the guest room. Vanessa's heels clicked behind me. I pulled their largest suitcase from the closet, the one with the bright ribbon tied to the handle, and unzipped it. "What are you doing?" Her voice wavered, but only slightly. "Packing," I said. "You can't touch our things?" I folded her teal workout set into the suitcase, placed the matching shoes on top, then added Michael's game controller. My motions were neat, deliberate, the way I'd once shelved books in my classroom library. She pulled out her phone. Her thumb flew across the screen. Her voice softened into panic as she spoke to the dispatcher. "My mother-in-law is having some kind of episode. She's throwing our things. She's dangerous." She looked at me as she said dangerous, as though the word might stick. I didn't shout. I didn't protest. I reached into my pocket and tapped the red circle of a recording app. The tiny dot glowed from behind the sugar canister as she continued her story, voice rising in carefully measured fear. Michael emerged from the hallway, hair damp, eyes fogged with confusion. "What's going on?" "Officers are on their way." The dispatcher's voice carried from the speaker. I zipped the suitcase closed, teeth of the metal aligning with a decisive click. The siren grew from a whisper to a wail outside, echoing through the cul-de-sac. Vanessa straightened her shoulders, ready for her audience. Michael hovered on the sidelines, a man torn between two truths and unwilling to choose. I walked to the front window. The lights from the cruiser splintered across the framed photo of my husband. I touched the glass, warm from the sun, and whispered the only thing that mattered. Not this time. The doorbell rang. Vanessa's eyes gleamed with triumph before she painted them over with concern. Michael stood still as stone. I opened the door, calm as I had ever been, and invited the uniforms inside. Somewhere behind me, the red dot pulsed steadily, catching every word, proof that my silence was over. The sirens reached my street faster than I thought possible. Their lights painted streaks across my living room walls, turning the familiar space into a stage set for chaos. My heart should have been racing, but it wasn't. I felt strangely steady, as if years of being quiet had been leading to this single confrontation. 2 officers stood on my porch, one younger with sharp eyes, the other older with the weary calm of a man who had seen too much. A paramedic trailed behind, his medical kit clattering softly with each step. At the curb sat a sleek black sedan that didn't belong to anyone in my neighborhood. Vanessa adjusted her blouse, mascara smudged just enough to look like she'd been crying. Michael hovered behind her, pale and silent, like a boy waiting for his teacher's verdict. "Mrs. Hartman," the older officer began cautiously. "We had a call about a disturbance." "Please come in," I replied, stepping aside. My voice was level, though I knew how this must look, an older widow, agitated, surrounded by younger relatives. Vanessa descended the stairs slowly, clutching a tissue. "Officers, thank God you're here." She's been shouting, throwing our things, accusing us of stealing. I'm terrified she's not safe, or that we aren't safe with her. Her eyes glistened with manufactured fear. The younger officer turned to me. "Ma'am, is this your residence?" I've lived here for 32 years. My name is on the deed. Vanessa placed a hand dramatically on her chest. I'm Vanessa Hartman, her daughter-in-law. We've been staying here to take care of her since her husband died. But lately, her voice cracked. She's so confused, she forgets what day it is, misplaces her cards, then blames us. The audacity nearly made me laugh. Take care of me? She can't remember to rinse her coffee mug. The paramedic stepped closer. Mrs. Hartman, I just want to make sure you're all right. Can you tell me the date? October 15th, Tuesday, 2:30 in the afternoon. Who's the president? I rattled off not just the name, but my social security number, address, and, because I'd once been a teacher, the opening lines of Hamlet. The young man's brows rose. She's perfectly lucid, he told the officers. That was when the man from the sedan entered. Tall, silver hair, expensive suit that screamed authority. He produced a card with a flourish. I'm Dr. Charles Benton, psychiatrist. Mrs. Hartman is my patient. She came to me last month with memory issues and paranoid delusions. My skin prickled. I've never seen this man before in my life. Margaret, he said, using my first name like a leash. Denial is common. Dementia patients often accuse family of theft. She accused us just last week, Vanessa chimed in, her tears flowing faster now. The pieces clicked, the sedan, the timing, the script. This wasn't an accident. The older officer asked if they could look around. I agreed. We walked through my spotless house, but in the guest room, the half-packed suitcase sat like a loaded weapon. To an outsider, it looked like chaos. Benton nodded solemnly. Agitation. Fixation on belongings. Textbook. Something inside me hardened. You are not my doctor, and you are not committing me anywhere. The younger officer frowned. If she says she's never met you, how are you her physician? Benton's smile faltered. She's confused about our sessions. I pressed. Then tell me the date of our last appointment. Where's your office? What's your practice called? He hesitated, then smoothed his tie. Patient confidentiality prevents... How convenient, I cut in. You can share my alleged dementia with strangers, but not basic facts. Before the tension snapped, the front door opened again. A woman in a navy suit strode in, briefcase in one hand, phone in the other. My lawyer, Linda Cho. Which one of you is Dr. Benton? He straightened. I am... Well, Dr. Benton, Linda said, her voice sharp as glass. The state medical board disagrees. They suspended your license 6 months ago for fraudulent psychiatric holds. Silence swallowed the room. Benton's face drained of color. This is a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Linda shot back, is you thinking you could run this con in my client's home. The younger officer's eyes widened. Vanessa's hand trembled around her tissue. Benton edged toward the door, mumbling, and slipped out before anyone stopped him. That night, I sat in Linda's office, porcelain teacup warming my hands as she spread documents across her desk. This wasn't random, she said. This was orchestrated. She tapped a file. Your daughter-in-law isn't who she claims to be. Her maiden name is Vanessa Cole. 3 previous marriages, all men decades older, all dead within a year. I felt my chest tighten. How? First husband, heart attack. Second, fell downstairs. Third, drowned in his pool. In each case, she inherited assets conveniently signed over shortly before their deaths. The words chilled me. And now she's married to my son. Linda nodded. He may not know. She's skilled, manipulative. But Eleanor... She leaned forward, eyes steady. You were next. You fit the profile perfectly. Wealthy widow, no close family nearby, healthy but aging. You were marked long before she ever met Michael. I set the cup down carefully. So the vacation photos, The coffee that tasted wrong, the documents I barely remember signing, none of it was random. Exactly. This is a network. Benton isn't a lone wolf. He's part of a scheme that stretches across states. Fake doctors, corrupt lawyers, placement coordinators. They create the appearance of a mental breakdown, get you committed, and within 72 hours file for guardianship. Once that's approved, they control your assets, your medical decisions, your freedom. I stared out the window at the city lights. Ordinary families heading home from work. Unaware predators like these walked among them. "How many others?" I whispered. Linda's voice was grim. Dozens, at least. Maybe hundreds. And unless we stop them, more. I pressed my palm flat against the cool glass. For months, I had felt powerless in my own house, diminished to a guest in the life I built. But in that moment, clarity cut through fear. They thought I was prey. They mistook quiet for weakness. I turned back to Linda. "What do we do?" She smiled, fierce. "First, you install cameras, record everything. Second, we alert the FBI. And third," she closed the folder with a decisive snap, "we set a trap." My hands no longer trembled. My voice no longer faltered. For the first time since Robert died, I felt like myself again. Not the grieving widow, not the silent host, but a woman with fight still burning. "They wanted bait," I said. "Let's give it to them." The following week, I sat in my kitchen while 2 FBI agents wired the corners of my living room with discreet microphones. Agent Laura Mitchell, calm and precise, laid a folder on the table between us. "His name is Richard Doyle. He poses as a financial advisor. We believe he's the placement coordinator for the network. He finds vulnerable seniors, convinces them to sign temporary powers of attorney, then hands them off to people like Benton." She tapped the folder. "We want you to meet him." I laughed, though it wasn't funny. "You want me to invite the wolf into the hen house?" "We'll be here the whole time," she said, "and we need him on tape." It didn't take long. 2 days later, a woman about my age approached me in the cereal aisle of the grocery store. She introduced herself as Helen Curtis, said she knew my daughter years ago in school. "I heard you were looking for someone trustworthy with finances," she murmured. Her smile was warm, rehearsed. She slipped a card into my hand. "Richard Doyle. He helped me protect my husband's estate from greedy relatives." Back home, I texted Agent Mitchell. "Perfect," she replied. When Richard called, his voice was butter smooth, the kind that makes you want to lean in. "Mrs. Hartman, I understand you've had some trouble with family. I'd be honored to help safeguard your assets." He suggested we meet in his downtown office, but I pressed back. "I'd be more comfortable at home." There was a pause, then his tone softened. "Of course. Tomorrow at 3. The next afternoon, Richard arrived with a leather briefcase polished to a shine. He looked every bit the respectable advisor. Silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, a smile designed to disarm. He spread papers across my coffee table, explaining each as if to a slow student. "This one simply transfers your funds into a protective account. Only temporary, just while we establish your asset shield." I studied the document, heart thudding. "It says you have control over all financial and medical decisions. Only while the process completes," he reassured, "completely safe." "And who decides when it's complete?" "I do," he said smoothly, too smoothly. I set the papers down. "So I give you control and you decide when to give it back. Forgive me, but that sounds less like protection and more like theft." His smile wavered. "Mrs. Hartman, you've clearly been under stress. Helen trusted me. Many women your age have. I promise you, this is the safest option." I leaned back in my chair, letting silence hang heavy. Then I nodded toward the van parked across the street. "Do you see that vehicle? Richard? The FBI has been listening to every word. His eyes flicked to the window, then back to me. He stuffed papers into his briefcase, muttering about entrapment. Before he reached the door, it opened. Agent Mitchell and 2 officers stepped inside. "Richard Doyle, you're under arrest for elder fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping." They read his rights as they cuffed him. His gaze met mine, full of venom. "You have no idea what you've done," he hissed. But I did. I had pulled a thread, and the whole rotten fabric was unraveling. In the days that followed, the FBI combed through Richard's records. What they uncovered turned my stomach. At the top of the chain sat Dr. Patricia Doyle, his sister, a licensed geriatrician in Chicago. She had used her position to identify elderly patients with wealth and little family support, funneling their information to the network. Over 8 years, they had stolen more than $50 million and placed over 200 seniors into locked facilities under fraudulent psychiatric holds. When Agent Mitchell told me, I felt the air leave my lungs. 200, I whispered. They would have put me in one of those places. She nodded. "We found your name in Patricia's files. Vanessa was directed to target your son. This wasn't chance. It was planned 18 months ago." I sat with that knowledge, the betrayal rippling deeper than I thought possible. My son's marriage, my groggy mornings, the documents I couldn't recall signing, it had all been orchestrated by strangers in suits and white coats. Patricia was arrested in Chicago. Vanessa was charged with conspiracy. Benton disappeared but remained on the FBI's wanted list. Richard sat in custody, his empire collapsing. Michael came to me one evening, eyes red-rimmed, shoulders slumped. "Mom, I didn't know," he said, voice breaking. "I thought she loved me. I thought I was lucky." "You ignored the way she spoke to me," I said softly. "You heard her tell me to leave my own house, and you said nothing." His face crumpled. "You're right. I was weak. I'm so sorry." I touched his hand. "You're my son. I love you. But respect isn't optional. Not here. Not ever again." He nodded, tears falling, and promised to move out, to start again. Weeks later, I sat in Agent Mitchell's office reading a letter from the Department of Justice. My cooperation had helped rescue 187 victims and recover $42 million in stolen assets. But the real reward came one afternoon when the phone rang. "Mrs. Hartman?" A woman's voice, strong despite the tremor. "My name is Dorothy Miller. I was one of them. They kept me in a facility in Nevada for over a year. Because of you, I'm home again, with my family." Her voice cracked. "You gave me my life back." After the call, I walked to my garden. The late sun spilled across the wisteria, and for the first time in months, the air smelled like mine. They had tried to make me a victim, tried to erase my voice, my independence, my name. But I hadn't let them. I had spoken, recorded, refused to fold. I lifted my face to the fading light and said it aloud, to myself, to the neighbors, to the ghosts of those who had been silenced. I am Eleanor Hartman. I am 67 years old, and I am nobody's victim. When the trials began, I sat in the back row of the courtroom and watched the people who had nearly stolen my life shuffle in wearing chains. Vanessa kept her eyes on the floor. Richard looked smaller without his polished suit. And Dr. Patricia Doyle, the woman who had built an empire out of targeting people like me, stood stiffly, her silver hair immaculate, but her power gone. The judge's gavel echoed through the chamber like the closing of a heavy book. Weeks later, my house was mine again. Michael had moved into a small apartment across town, trying to rebuild what Vanessa had hollowed out of him. He came by on Sundays, bringing groceries and an apology in every gesture. I didn't forgive quickly, but I didn't shut him out either. Healing, I learned, is not a sprint. It is a series of steady steps across uneven ground. The FBI called to say more victims were being returned to their families, their voices restored after years of being silenced. One of them, a woman named Dorothy, sent me a handwritten note. Because you spoke, I was found. I held that letter in my hands for a long time, feeling the weight of what it meant. Some nights I still wake to the echo of Vanessa's voice, telling me to leave my own home. But then I remember the red dot of my phone glowing steady, my lawyer walking through the door like an avenging angel, the agents waiting in the van outside. I remember that I did not fold. I am Eleanor Hartman. I am 67 years old, and I am proof that even when the people closest to you turn against you, you can stand, you can fight, and you can win. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.